of any kind of value. As Virginia said, I'm here to be a resource and here to answer any questions you guys may have and hopefully provide a little bit of a different perspective on this particular condition and on what we do as neurologically based chiropractors. I know that's an unfamiliar term for probably everybody here, so I can't wait to share that with everybody and let you know what it is that we do. So just a little intro about myself. As you can see, I am a father. That's my son, Rivers. He is about 10 months old now, so that's pictures back around Halloween. And my beautiful wife, Dr. Lynn, who is also a chiropractor here in the office. We both own Our Tribe Center for Wellbeing. We're a brain-based chiropractic office located here in Denver, Colorado. And I'll get into a little bit more what it means to be a neurologically based chiropractor and really how we're different than maybe anything else that you've come across. So, little disclaimer, just the fun legal stuff we have to go through. So everything, the information provided is not intended to replace a consultation, evaluation, services, or establishment of a licensed practitioner-patient relationship. It's not a diagnostic or does not replace an in-person examination and agreed upon course of action. It's not to be used or to be employed as a means of practicing outside the state or scope of licensure. The material is meant for information and possible supplementation of what is provided by your specific healthcare provider. It should be reviewed with that licensed practitioner. So yeah, please share this information and talk. Cool, so let's dive right in. So what do we know about mast cell activation syndrome? Some of the basics that we know the mast cells have really gone haywire. We know that many of you are experiencing all kinds of symptoms. You're experiencing itching, you're experiencing hives, you're experiencing headaches, you're experiencing gastrointestinal symptoms like diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, gastroesophageal reflux, changing blood pressure, maybe it's going up and down, and the list could go on for days. I've spoken with many of you and definitely been following some of these stories and experiences in the group, and a common thing I've seen is that many of you attending doctors have had the experience that the doctor either thinks that you're crazy. They think that no one could possibly present with this many particular symptoms that are totally unrelated, or they're really just there to do their best guess. They're trying to offer some kind of medication to manage the particular condition. I think most importantly, we know that it sucks. We know that what you guys are experiencing it's not fun. It's actually quite frustrating and it's quite awful. It's ruining your lives. It's interfering with your happiness, your well-being, your health. But the question that I have for you all is, has anyone spoken about the process that causes all these particular conditions? Has anyone looked at the process in front of the condition? I asked that particular question because there is no condition outside of trauma that doesn't have a process in front of it. And the major critique I have I call it our sick care system because I don't really think it's a healthcare system. Our sick care system is that we're really good at isolating singular cause and effect events, but then we stop asking questions of how this fits into the greater picture. How does this fit into the greater picture of the function of the human body? And how does this fit into the greater picture of our health? And so in order to do that, we have to address really one of the first major really conundrums and really major contradictions in our healthcare or sick care system, and that's linear versus nonlinear science. And so very simply, a great example of what linear versus nonlinear science is if you take a rock and you toss it into a pond, what's going to happen is you're going to see those ripples coming out from where you tossed the rock into the water. Linear-based science looks at those ripples coming out and breaks them into vectors. They're not looking at the entire circle. They're looking at each individual vector. Nonlinear science understands that the human body is a system of systems and that everything has an effect on everything else. So very quickly, you can understand that if you're looking at the human body as a system of systems, and you're looking at the human body as an intelligent design, that every single thing that happens is an effect of a process. And every single thing that happens has a reason for it, and it's connected to everything else. You can't isolate particular events, and you can't look at things in a vacuum. So let me give you an example. So I asked a question in the group the other day of how many people have low vitamin D. And I just had a comment about 10 minutes ago on that same post. Every single person said low. So I know I'm not monitoring the chat, but for everybody tonight, if you could comment, how many here have low vitamin D? How many of you have been to a doctor, have had blood work done, and they've told you that your vitamin D is low? And so for all of you that are commenting, again, I'll be able to check the feed a little bit later, but at the same time, how many of you wake up at night to go to the bathroom? Or how many of you wake up at night at least once? How many of you wake up twice? And if you wake up more than 3 times at night? I ask because most of us only know vitamin D as a source for strong bones. We think vitamin D, we think calcium, we think drink your milk, we think strong bones. But what many of you probably don't know is that vitamin D has a much bigger role to play in your body, and particularly in your health and in your immune system. And what probably a lot of you don't know is that vitamin D, it has to be cooked or it has to be processed in order for your body to use it. This process is called hydroxylation, but for our purposes and for our discussion here tonight, we can just call it cooked. So let me break down the process of vitamin D so you guys can get an understanding of linear science and nonlinear science and how you can't take an isolated event. So linear science is looking at vitamin D and looking at it saying, well, it only has an effect on bones. It's only there to make your bones strong. But let's look at the bigger picture of the human body and how it's a system of systems. So typically, vitamin D is produced by sunlight. That's where we get the majority of our vitamin D. So sunlight hits your skin and it turns the cholesterol in your skin into the first form of vitamin D. That's called cholecalciferol. That cholecalciferol is then shipped to your liver where it's cooked for the first time, and that turns into 25-hydroxycholecalciferol. Don't worry about the names. It's not going to be a test at the end. We're not learning biochemistry, but just giving you an idea. So this first form is what the doctors actually measure in your blood to determine your vitamin D levels, okay? So the funny part about that is, though, is that this form is still not the active form of vitamin D that your body needs to function and do all the things that it does. This just happens to be the vitamin D that doctors measure because it actually has what's called half-life, which is how long it's in the body, and it's easier for them to measure. Okay, however, this form of vitamin D is then shipped to your kidneys where it's cooked again and turned into the active form of vitamin D. Okay, now this is where linear and non-linear science differentiate. So the vitamin D is then shipped up to your brain where it's sent a signal for your brain to produce serotonin. Okay, serotonin is a hormone that we all know is the feel-good hormone. Okay, but also, this is important for this group, serotonin is the main fuel source for your immune system. Let that sink in for a second. Serotonin is the fuel source for your immune system. So a lot of you people answered, you have low vitamin D. So what do you think that means? You have possibly low serotonin levels. Some of you may be feeling things like anxiety, maybe depression, maybe the blues, but everyone here is also suffering from mast cell inactivated autoimmune condition. So I'm sure a lot of you have been told you need to take a supplement, but your vitamin D levels are still low. So why aren't you making the active form of vitamin D is the question. We're going to be looking at the human body's entire system of systems. How come you're not making the active form of vitamin D? You're taking supplements. You're probably all getting at least 20 minutes of sun exposure a day. I'm sure you're driving in your car at least a total collection of 20 minutes. And some of us live here in Denver, Colorado, or in the Front Range. We average over 200 days of sunlight a year. Why aren't we getting the active form of vitamin D? And the reason that you're not getting it is because your kidneys are able to convert that inactive form of vitamin D into the active form of vitamin D when you're in your deepest stage of sleep. And that's called delta sleep. It's where you recover, and it's also where the majority of your healing and recuperation happens, which we'll get into that a little bit later. So when you're in delta sleep, your body sends out a hormone to keep your kidneys from sitting fluid to the bladder. That's what makes you have to get up and go to the bathroom at night. But your body sends a hormone to keep your kidneys from doing that. So when your kidneys aren't sending fluid down to the bladder, they're able to activate this form of vitamin D. It then stimulates the brain to make serotonin, and then you're creating the active form of your then so you're creating serotonin, and then you're giving fuel to your immune system. But if you don't get into delta sleep, you don't make that vitamin D, you don't make the serotonin, and your immune system doesn't have the fuel that it needs. So most everything we hear today in the scientific arena is focused around the conditions that people suffer from. And just like you all, you've been diagnosed and offered treatment for these conditions, but I ask again, who has spoken about the process that causes these conditions? Because like I said, every single condition outside of trauma has a process in front of it, and we have to start looking at the process if we're going to start getting answers to what is going on. Linear-based science in our modern healthcare system is a technological marvel. We have the best emergency care system on the entire planet. So if you get into an emergency, you couldn't be in a better place in the entire world. But for the second year in a row now, news was released that our lifespan is decreasing, that our health continues to decline. You all can definitely attest to that and what you're experiencing. And we don't have answers for these problems. Okay, so are there any questions so far? And Virginia, you can help me with the feed there. Are there any questions? I know I've covered a little bit, so anything's come up for anybody?
I don't see any questions. I think you're good.
Fantastic. Okay, moving on. So if we're going to look at the process, we have to look at the one system that is in charge and that is interconnected to all the events that happen. And that is your nerve system. Okay, trillions of times a day, your body is communicating information all around you. Every single trillion, all the trillions of cells that are in your body, all that has to communicate through the nerve system. Okay? The nerve system is made up of your brain, your spinal cord, and all the nerves in your body. It's often called the master system of your body. Okay, it's responsible for everything, such as keeping your heart beating, your lungs breathing, digesting food, as well as all the external things like what you're seeing on the computer or even hearing my voice. And just an incredible fact for you here, what I found was that we process about 77 trillion bits of information every single day. I mean, it's a tremendous amount. This is literally the supercomputer on the planet. And incredibly enough, out of all that's happening there, 95% of the function of your nervous system is subconscious. So the majority of your body's functions go on without you ever even knowing it, except when something breaks down. So let me give you the overview of how the nerve system works. So like I said, each day our body has to interpret 77 trillion bits of information, and that means we have to appropriately respond 77 trillion times each day. So an appropriate response can really be broken down into 3 simple steps. We engage, we react, and we disengage. Now, the most important step in this sequence, and the only one that we can consciously control, is whether we disengage. And this is critical because your nerve system has a limited amount that it can handle at one time, and that's called capacity. So capacity is like the cup in the background. It's how much you can handle and how much life is throwing at you, okay? Now the stuff that life is throwing at you, that's like the water. And we call that stress load. Okay, now stress load could be further broken down into 3 categories. We could call that physical, chemical, and emotional. I could do an entire talk just on stress load and the physical, chemical, and emotional things that we encounter each day, but I'm going to try and keep it simple for tonight. But think of these things. They include everything that you could possibly think of. They include the foods and medications that you consume. They include the air that you breathe, the chemicals in your home. But the biggest demands in our life, especially in our modern age, and why we're seeing such it's an epidemic of these chronic diseases that are popping up, and especially things like mast cell, is the emotional things that happen to us. And that's things like our family interactions, our friends, our finances, and work. I say emotional stresses are the most damaging. It's because emotional stresses we can make on our own. We can't produce chemical stresses. We can produce physical things. We could injure ourselves, but we don't. But emotional stresses, we manufacture that. And when we get stuck into this kind of thinking, when you start getting to things like, well, what if this happens? Or like, what if that happens? And your mind starts to race. Start to think about all the possibilities and all the things that can go wrong. And you're constantly worrying about the what ifs. This increases the stress load on our body very quickly, and the problem is it's really hard to turn off. It's really hard to turn off all the different worries, and even the minor things that come up. Like, oh, do I have enough money for lunch today? Or did I remember to pay this bill? Did I remember to call this person back? Did I check this email? All these different things come up. These are all emotional stressors. These are all the pieces and all that water that's pouring into that cup in the background. Okay? Any questions? Anything going on right now?
I don't see anything, Sam.
Perfect. Okay, so I have a question for you all. So let me ask before I move on, who feels in their life like they don't disengage? And you guys can type your responses into the chat box. Okay, and as we're doing that, I'm going to move on to sympathetic versus parasympathetic. So these are the two different systems of the nervous system, and I'm going to answer the question, what happens if we don't disengage and that stress load overcomes our capacity, just like what's happening in this cup here as it starts to overflow? So what happens when we don't disengage and that stress load overcomes our capacity? Well, the first thing that happens is our body triggers what's called the sympathetic nervous system. And really simply put, the sympathetic nervous system is also called your fight or flight nervous system. Okay, on the opposite end of that, you have what's called the parasympathetic nervous system. And your parasympathetic nervous system, really simply put, just like right there, it's rest, digest, and most importantly, heal. And so diving into specifically the sympathetic nervous system, this is where the process emerges. This is where we start to look at what happens before things start to emerge, before the symptoms start to emerge, and before the conditions start to happen. This is the process. So when you trigger the sympathetic nervous system in the initial stages, it's a good thing. We need that to happen, because otherwise as a species we wouldn't have survived. We would have been eaten by the tiger, we would have been eaten by the lion long ago. So initially, you release adrenaline and you release cortisol to get the engine revving. You release those to start to get the body primed and to get everything moving quicker and faster. You release glucose because you need energy. You need lots of energy. So glucose is the fastest thing that your body can use because it doesn't have to break it down. It can be easily absorbed into every cell and used by the brain. And to do that, your heart rate increases and your breathing increases. And as you can see, your immune system response goes up at first. Because if your body gets cut, it needs to be ready to deal with the bacteria or viruses that can get you. Your pain tolerance increases. So if you did get hit, you don't immediately fall down on the ground going, ow, ow, ow. Your blood pressure increases to move all the nutrients and chemicals around, and your hands get cold and sweaty. This happens because blood has moved away from your hands and your feet to your major muscle groups, again, so that you can fight or that you can run away. You also see where it says brain activity, beta. Your brain is in charge of all of this, and it dials in that particular brain wave called beta because it's focused on your survival, so you're more alert, you're more anxious, and you're on edge. And at the same time, your body mobilizes resources to keep you alive. And where does it take it from? Because when you're in a sympathetic state, when you're in this fight or flight state, it takes a ton of energy. And it robs it from the most energy consuming systems in the body. And that's your digestive system, your reproductive system, and your healing systems, your parasympathetic nervous systems. Those are the most energy consuming systems in the body. Your body steals that away to keep you alive. Okay, so we can look at the other side of this slide now under the prolonged stress response. And this is where a lot of you are probably going to really start to hear yourselves in this. Okay, so the very first thing that happens is that decreased immune system response. And one reason is that we already covered. You've turned off your growth and healing response, so you're not getting into that deep delta sleep you need to make that vitamin D to stimulate the fuel for your immune system. Like I said, 95% of the nerve system function is subconscious. So a lot of people that come into our office, when we ask them, do you feel stressed? They're like, well, no, I don't feel stressed at all. But that's why we have a particular analysis we use, particular advanced diagnostic equipment that checks the function of the nervous system. We don't make our guesses on 5%. We look at the entire 100% of what's going on. So we have to look at how the nerve system is functioning. And for the majority of people, their nerve system is on edge. Their nervous system is constantly scanning their environment because it's thinking there's a threat. And that's why you've got all this stuff happening, is because 95% of underneath the surface of subconsciously going on, it's saying there's a threat, there's danger, and that's happening all the time. So you've turned off that growth and healing response. You're not getting to that deep delta sleep, because maybe some of you guys can relate. You're getting a full night's rest. You're getting 5, 6, 8 hours, maybe more of sleep. But how many of you are waking up just exhausted in the morning? Except the reason for that is because you're not getting into that deep sleep that you need. The second reason that the immune system response is decreased is because you've burned it out. Like I said, it's doing everything it can to fight off invaders. It's constantly on threat, and it's constantly vigilant. And it's been running. And when this happens, when the immune system is on red alert, when it's constantly on edge, it no longer listens to the communications coming in from the nervous system. It really goes rogue. And when it does that, everything in the body becomes a threat. It no longer identifies normal tissue and normal cells as you. It says, no, that's an invader. No, that's a foreign invader. I need to get rid of that. I need to attack that. And so it just blasts out everything. A lot of you experience the histamine releases and all that comes with that. It's because your immune system is no longer communicating with your nervous system, and it's targeting everything as a threat. So the next thing you can see, memory and learning decrease. They decrease because your brain is shifting resources away from the areas of memory and learning. Those are mainly in the middle part of your head, your brain, and the back part of your brain. It's shifting resources away from there, and it's shifting resources more into, again, that stressed out and fight or flight response. So often people experience things like fuzzy thinking, things like brain fog and memory issues. And a lot of times people experience, they tend to have more shorter fuses. Even you can get into things like creativity and those feelings of bliss and feelings of ease. All that comes from your higher brain centers, and your body's actually sending blood away from those areas because, again, it's stuck in that sympathetic, that fight or flight response. Next thing you can see is impotence and anovulation. Again, that occurs because your body's shifting resources away from your reproductive system. You're in survival mode. You're not interested. Your body's not interested in trying to reproduce and go in that direction. It's interested in keeping you alive. You can see after a longer period of time, your pain tolerance goes down because you've exhausted all of your internal resources. Your body can no longer keep up with the lifestyle that you're trying to live, and pain tolerance goes down. Your cells have constantly absorbed glucose during this time because they need to maintain that high energy state of function. And after prolonged exposure, their ability to take in glucose decreases. And it actually just becomes intolerant to the glucose that's there, which is why a lot of people experience weight gain and why we're seeing this huge epidemic of type 2 diabetes happening from adults all the way even to kids now. And it's happening because your body's constant pumping out glucose into the bloodstream, trying to get the cells to keep the energy level high, and they're just saying, no, we don't want any more. We can't take it. Fatigue sets in because obviously, like I said, the fight or flight response is massively energy demanding, and you can't keep up. Your body can't keep up this state for a long period of time. The current research and current estimates are showing that after a particular event, whatever it's supposed to be that triggers your sympathetic system, after it has ended, it should turn off within 15 minutes. And obviously for most people it doesn't. You can see respiratory problems happen. Why? Because the cellular layers in the lungs are only single cells thick. And when you breathe more rapidly, you start to damage the tissue much easier. So when you're constantly breathing in, you're doing these shallow breaths, which you may not even realize that you're doing, you're damaging the tissue. And we talked about the burned out immune system. So now you're more susceptible to infections, more susceptible to all the viruses and germs that are out there. Depression. Again, you're not making your vitamin D, so you're not making your serotonin, so you're more likely to be depressed, you're more likely to feel anxious, you're more likely to have the blues, all these different kind of things. Digestive illnesses occur because, again, you've moved major blood sources away from your digestive system, so the cells aren't getting their proper nutrients, so they can't function, and they're not getting the waste products they've created moved out. Cells can't break down the food you eat, so it putrefies and it stagnates in your digestive system. And for maybe many of you, you've experienced digestive problems, you're not digesting food properly, you start to develop food sensitivities because your body's now identifying these things as foreign invaders and not food for nutrients. You get things like irritable bowel, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, things like that. It's a lot. So now you see what we can't look at this as a singular event. We can't break this down into, well, this causes this, so I need to take this particular action. It's all connected. You have to look at the body as a system of systems because that's what it is. Okay, so what do we do about all that? What do we do about addressing the fight or flight response? What do we do about addressing all the stuff that I just mentioned, all that's happening and everything that you all are experiencing? Well, the common reason and the common things that happen that most people try to address is they try to address all those symptoms and conditions of the sympathetic nervous system. Medications are prescribed because we're in pain, we take a pill. We're overproducing histamine, so we take a pill. We feel depressed or anxious, we take a pill. We have a skin rash, we take a pill. Okay, let me be clear, I'm not blaming anybody for trying to ease their suffering. Please don't take me as doing that. But I blame our healthcare system, or like I said, our sick care system, because we're applying that linear-based science to a nonlinear system. We're looking at only the sympathetic side of the nervous system, and we're trying to quiet down the responses that it's doing, instead of looking at, well, how does the body really heal, and how do we get it to do that? So the key to regaining your health doesn't lie in managing the effects of the sympathetic system. You have to get your body back into balance, and it happens when you start to stimulate the parasympathetic side of your nervous system, which, like I said, is the side that lets you rest, you digest, and you heal. So really simply put, the easiest way to think about all this, when you've got an imbalance of what's going on, think about your body as like a 20-ounce cup, and life is giving you 40 ounces of stress to deal with. You can pour all that out at once, or you can try and pour it out slowly over time. But either way, that cup is going to overflow. And so the only solution is to get a bigger cup. That's all you can do. Get a bigger cup. Get the nervous system balanced. Get it back into a parasympathetic state so that you can heal, so that you can rest, that your body can get you back into normal and you can get your life back. So the question is how? How do we do that? How do we get the body back into balance? How do we get you a bigger cup so that when life is throwing these stressors at you, you can ride with it and it doesn't affect you in the way that it's affecting you now? Okay, the most powerful way to interrupt this sympathetic fight or flight response is through the chiropractic adjustment. Current research is actually showing us that it actually changes the way your brain is communicating. It interrupts that fight or flight pattern, and your body is able to heal. Your body is able to get some perspective and say, oh, I've been in this sympathetic state. I need to get back into balance. I need to get back into a restful state. And so that's why my wife and I, we've set up on this path to offer the most cutting edge neurologically based chiropractic care. And like I mentioned, we perform a full evaluation of how your nerve system is operating. We create a unique plan tailored to your health and financial needs. Your nerve system, like I said, is 95% subconscious. So we can't go off of, well, how are you feeling today? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling stressed? Because that's only 5% of the equation. Okay, we practice in Denver, Colorado. If anything that I've said tonight, I know I've said a lot and I've said it pretty quickly. If anything has sparked your interest, if you want to learn more, please feel free to reach out to us at the phone number listed here, 720-271-0671, or shoot us an email. We love to sit down and talk with you about what's going on, about what you're experiencing, and come up with a plan to help you get over that. For a lot of you, I know this group is international. I know a lot of people will be looking at this later on as well. And many of you don't live in the Denver area. Many of you live, all across the country and all across the world. Another fantastic device that we actually use is something that's called BrainTap. BrainTap is a combination of several different technologies, but it works by entraining your brain into specific healing frequencies that generate the parasympathetic healing response. It's actually able to take your brain into that healing state so that you can start to heal. And it's a great option if you're unable to make it to us, and we do sell those. We are able to ship those. If you want more information about that, please reach out to us. We're here to help. We're here to help you guys. I know there's been a lot of things that have happened that you're not getting answers for, and you're not getting solutions to the problems, and that's what we're all about. And finally, a wonderful option that we have just really started diving into, but really seeing a lot of power in, is the essential oils. Specifically, the two I want to mention here are frankincense and copiaba. So the coolest thing I saw was a colleague of mine was hooked up to an EEG. That's a device that measures brain activity. And they actually had him smell the frankincense. And instantly, I kid you not, we saw his beta brainwaves, those brainwaves that cause the anxiety and that cause the fight or flight response, drop. And the brainwaves for healing and growth and recovery and rest, just increase. They just totally flipped. It was the coolest thing. Outside of the chiropractic adjustment, I've never seen anything do that. It was quite spectacular. So like I said, contact us. Our phone number listed there. That's my personal email as well. And let me invite you to check out our Facebook page. We constantly are posting information there. We've got blogs coming out to talk about more about this subject. If Virginia would have me, I would love to conduct more webinars in the future to continue to educate, to continue to share with what we're doing here and how it can help you guys. If you're looking to maybe get into a neurologically based chiropractic office, I can contact me. I can see if there's a doctor in your area that can possibly take care of you. And with that, Virginia, if there are any questions, I'd love to field questions. Tell me what's up.
Yeah, I don't see any questions in Zoom, and I've turned off my phone, so I'm not seeing the feed into Facebook. But remember, Facebook has a bit of a lag to Facebook.
Yeah.
But I want to chime in here, and Dr. Sam and Dr. Lynn can't say this, but I want to be as open with you as I can. I know what they are doing is something different than what I have seen elsewhere, and can really, truly help this community. And Sam and I first connected on what we can do to help MCAS. It was not about making money for him, and it's not about making money for him. And he has been involved in our community since that discussion many months ago. It's hard for him as a doctor to see and hear some of what we're going through, knowing that vitamin D and the parasympathetic system have such an issue for us, and none of us, I'm assuming most of us, are not getting that addressed. And since MCAS is so new, it's going to take a long time for all of us to find the right recipes for us. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask it in here. Ask it in the group, because he's in there a lot, but be sure that you're tagging him in that group, and ask your questions. And if you want him to come in and do another educational webinar with us, as you heard him say, he'd be happy to do that. Let him know what you want more information on. So I think that might wrap it up tonight, Sam, unless you've got something else. Because I'm not seeing anything else in the chat.
Okay. No, I mean, that's it for me. Like I said, the parasympathetic nervous system has to be addressed. If you're ever going to get any kind of help in anything that you're experiencing, you have to start there. And like I said, the sad part about our sick care system is that no one is doing that. Everyone is continually looking to address all of the symptomatology coming from the sympathetic nervous system, and that's a dead end. There's no answers there.
Yeah. So I know that this has helped some people put together a couple of pieces, and every time we can put together a piece, that means a greater chance at health for us. So thank you very much, Dr. Lynn and Dr. Sam, for your time today and your support with this issue. I can't wait to see what together as a group we can do to help many, many more people that are not yet in this group or are not yet understanding what MCAS is, or even begin to know how to treat it.
Yes. Thank you, Virginia, for inviting me tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have a great evening, everybody, and feel free to chime in with your questions at any point in time.
Yes.
Bye.